Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, and we're also going to stick to my home county of Skåne here in the very south of the country. For this review we are trying something from a brewery that I've never had anything from before, but as I've told you in previous Swedish reviews, you can find some real gems amongst the relatively small and unknown Swedish craft breweries. There are somewhere in the region of 800 little breweries across the country these days, which is a very impressive number when you consider that Sweden has only about 10 million people, but there's been a long culture of home brewing here, and a lot of these home brewers are now turning commercial, which is great for the drinker because you get a huge choice of things. So as I say, some great beers to be had amongst the very small breweries that are relatively unheard of. So I always make the effort to introduce a couple of these to you here on the channel every month. But yeah, for this one, like I say, we are going to stick to my home county of Skåne. We're going to go to a little place called Kagstorp, which is a bit to the northeast of Trelleborg on the very south coast of Sweden. So we're having a look at my first beer from Hönsinge Hantwerksbryggeri, and this one is their Skånsk Sommar lager. So it comes in at 4.6% ABV, and I'm not sure exactly what kind of lager this one is going to be, but we'll soon find out. It seems quite interesting just looking at the label there. But yeah, this beer was released as part of the local Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for July of 2021, if memory serves me correctly. It could have been June, but I'm pretty sure it was July. And yeah, I got this one again just because I've been enjoying a lot of lagers recently, and it was another brewery that I hadn't had anything from before, so I thought, well, why not? But yeah, 4.6% lager beer, this one. I'm guessing it'll be some sort of Helles lager, but let's just see how we go with this one. Very curious to see how it turns out. Always nice to introduce new breweries to you here on the channel as well. So fingers crossed it's another good one, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Hönsinge Hantwerksbryggeri. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Hönsinge Hantwerksbryggeri. So Hönsinge Hantwerksbryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Kagstorp, which is a little bit to the northeast of Trelleborg on the very southern part of the Swedish coast here in Skåne. But the brewery was established back in 2015, but it seems to have gathered a lot more momentum since mid-2019. So the main man behind this company is Magnus Servin, who is, he's got quite an interesting background, but there are other shareholders in the company as well, but he is the main man. He has a background in graphic design and advertising, and he worked for Stena Travel for a number of years, but he's also helped to create the Southern Destination Guide for Skåne, which outlines and lists various different things that you can do. It includes breweries, wineries, restaurants, and hiking trails or cycling trails and all of these kind of things. You can't hike too much in Skåne because it's pretty flat actually, but yeah, there's lots of interesting things to be had around Skåne, and he is one of the creators of this online guide to the county. So Southern Destination, do go and check it out. I was quite impressed when I was playing around with it earlier on. But the company itself, they invested in some new and larger equipment in 2019, and they opened their brewery pub that summer as well, and they've been doing so over the last kind of over the last two summers, I guess, as well. But the brewery itself is based in an old forge or smithery, whatever you want to call it, and they currently produce around 30,000 litres of beer per year. If you take a look on the website, there is quite an impressive list of beers there actually for a brewery that is so small, particularly one that I hadn't heard of before. But as of July 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have released around 98 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So yeah, brewing a lot of stuff in just very small batches, selling it at their pub, and they are starting to get some things into Systembolaget now as well. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you for the moment about Hönsinge Hantwerksbryggeri. But yeah, definitely a company that I might need to keep an eye on. Some of the beers that they had listed on the website seemed really quite interesting. So yeah, that's it. So if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all those different beers that they've done. But yeah, you know, for a brewery that's relatively new, 90 beers already is pretty damn impressive. But yeah, let's go for it then. So we'll have a little look at the beer itself. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty straightforward, which is kind of cool. But there you can see the Hönsinge Hantwerksbryggeri symbol there. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, so I do apologise if I am. We're filming this review a little bit tired, so it's probably a bit worse than normal. But yeah, you can see it, nice kind of plain sort of silver bottle cap on this one. But a 330ml bottle this, I think I paid about 25 Swedish kronor for this beer, so that translates to roughly €2.50, a little bit more than £2 sterling, and I guess somewhere in the region of $3 American for those of you watching over there. But like we said, the Skånsk Sommar lager, it comes in at 4.6% ABV. The malt base in this one is Pilsner malt, wheat and corn, so Pilsner malt Vete of Mais. But it should be interesting in that sense to see where it comes in the lager spectrum, I guess we could say. And it's hopped with Citra and Centennial, both American hops. Citra comes in about 14% alpha acid, lovely kind of mangoey notes, a lot of complexities, but a wee bit of a lemon limey sort of thing. And Centennial, as we know, that's about 12% alpha acid, and it gives you a big sort of lemony character. But yeah, this should be quite nice. 330ml bottle, this one. I think we should get this guy out and into the glass and see how we go. So, the basic definition of a lager, of course, is a cold temperature fermentation, bottom fermenting yeast. The fermentation takes place between 8 to 12 degrees, whereas ales, of course, are top fermenting yeasts, and their fermentation takes place between about 15 to 18 degrees Celsius. And yeah, but you get lots of different types of lager beers. Of course, probably the most famous groups would be the German group and the Czech group, but in a lot of ways they are quite similar. So yeah, the German ones in my experience tend to be a bit lighter and crisper, whereas the Czech ones tend to be a wee bit more kind of bready and yeasty. But just before the head disappears on this one, you could see that this beer poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of creamy coloured head. It has just faded away to be really quite nice, but then round the edge of the glass there, you can feel, or you can see rather, it's leaving a nice foamy ring, but that head is pretty much fading away to be not a lot actually. But yeah, as I was saying, you've got the German and the Czech lagers. You've also got the Pilsner as well, which is originally from the Czech Republic, the most popular beer style in the world. You've got the Vienna lager as well. So in the German lagers, you've got the Helles Blonde, the Dunkel sort of mahogany colour, the Schwarzbier black. You've got the various different kinds of bocks, you know, Maibock, Hellerbock, Doppelbock, all of these kind of things. In the Czech Republic, you've got the Svetli Blonde lager, the Letzak Amber lager, the Cherny mahogany lager, and also the Tamavi the black lager, I guess we could say. So yeah, there's lots of different lager types out there. So as I always do with these kind of videos, I love a good lager beer. So I'll probably be trying to figure out exactly what style category this one fits into. But from the appearance, we can tell it is going to be some sort of a Helles lager, or Svetli, as the Czechs would call it. But yeah, certainly it looks the part, this one. As you can see, a lovely, bright, kind of naturally hazy golden yellow colour, this one. A nice golden straw colour. But yeah, if I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see the artwork. Not the artwork. The haze on this one is just kind of nice and natural. It's got that sort of natural, unfiltered type thing to it, and I think that's always better. Actually, I do prefer unfiltered beers to filtered ones, of course, but that's just me. But there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But I mean, overall, it does go together really nicely, actually. So yeah, definitely in terms of appearance, something along the lines of a Helles lager, but exactly what type of Helles lager, I'm not 100% sure. When there's corn in the malt base here, it could well be intended as like a pale lager of some description, you know, like a sort of macro style lager, but a bit better, I guess we could say. So yeah, curious to see what this one has in store for us. But appearance wise, it's certainly looking like a sort of Helles lager, a German Helles, a Czech Svetli, or you know, some kind of Pilsner or something like that. So let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. I'm very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. yeah, the aroma of this one is very, very nice actually. So yeah, straight away with this beer, you can smell the malt base definitely has a wee bit of that kind of corny thing to it. It's got that wet sort of corny vibe to it that you would often find in some of these bigger brewed macro beers. But yeah, the backbone out of this beer is really quite interesting. So yeah, where do we start with this then? So the backbone of the beer, you can smell a little bit of a kind of smooth white bready kind of character in there. There's a wee bit of bread crust as well, but you can also smell that sort of wet. You can smell a bit of wheaty character in there, giving the beer a little bit of bite and a nice kind of corny. You do get a wee bit of that kind of corny sweetness out of this one for sure. You can also smell a wee bit of the crispness from the Pilsner malt too. And as I've told you in previous reviews, Pilsner malt is a pain in the backside to describe because it's really about the vibe that it gives the beer. It gives the beer this really crisp sort of thing, which is very distinctive. But this one certainly has a wee bit of a kind of it certainly has a wee bit of a sort of McVitie's digestive biscuity sweetness to it. You certainly get that in the middle of the nose with this beer. So yeah, white bready base to the beer, a bit of bread crust, some kind of corny sweetness sitting on top of that. The corn actually comes across as quite wet in this beer. Then you've got some of the Pilsner malt crispness and also a wee bit of a kind of sweet, you've also got a wee bit of a sort of sweeter biscuity, McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing to this one, which I do like. I think I'm going to enjoy this beer. I do think I am. I'm just getting some good vibes out of this. But yeah, I don't think there's too much else to say about the malt base in this one. So let's look at the hoppy side of things. So yeah, in the back corners of the palate, in the back corners of the nose, man, I shouldn't film these reviews when I've been working. I seem like I've got early onset Alzheimer's these days. I keep mixing up my words and things, but yeah, the in the back sort of corners of the nose, if you like, you can certainly get a wee touch of earthiness out of this one. But there's a lovely kind of big floral character to the beer, and you're going to get that from these two American hops that are in here, the Centennial and the Citra. They're both going to give you that, but it has quite a bright grassy character on the front of the nose, which I really enjoy as well. You've got a lovely little bit of a kind of brighter grassiness in there. So yeah, the green component of this one is fairly standard, if you like. It's got that big wet grassy note to it, but it's also slightly zesty at the same time. So yeah, I can appreciate how this one goes about its business, that's for sure. But yeah, aroma wise, I think this one, the green component certainly is quite nice. So we'll see how it goes. We'll need to see how it goes with this one. But yeah, hoppy wise, looking forward to this. On the fruity side of things, it is kind of what you would expect. I mean, there's a wee touch of apricot to this one. I can certainly get a wee bit of mango from the Citra as well. There's certainly a little bit of that. So yeah, a wee bit of apricot, a wee bit of mango in there. I'm getting a few kind of, dried fruity elements to it, like a little bit of sultana or something. Certainly a wee bit of an oily pear out of this beer as well, and you can smell with the grassy notes of the beer, you can smell a wee bit of the kind of lemony character from the Centennial coming out of this as well. So yeah, an interesting aroma to this beer, I have to say. The fact that it smells craft, it smells like a craft lager beer apart from the corn. So it's almost like the hoppy character to this beer is like, the hoppy character to this beer is proper kind of craft-like, if you like, but the malt base seems a little bit different. So there's craft elements to the malt base, but the corn is the thing that really comes out of this. It just smells like it makes the aroma smell like really wet, I think. So yeah, interesting stuff for sure, I would say, on the aroma. So take a little bit of time to smell that before you get stuck into it. I've also noticed on the bottle here that it says this is lab batch number 1. So obviously an experimental beer that they're doing actually. But I think we should have a taste of this beer now and see how we go. So this one is the Skånsk Sommar lager from Hönsinge Hantwerksbryggeri in Kagstorp near Trelleborg here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. What was it? A 4.6% lager beer, this one. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. yeah, you know, you certainly do get a bit of corn sweetness on the back end of this beer, we'll say that. But it's actually it's a really just first impression of this is a really nice, kind of wet, pleasant, drinkable lager beer. So yeah, certainly wouldn't hesitate to have, a 400 of that. Our measurements here in Sweden, incidentally, are 400 mils, not half litres like they are in Germany or whatever. But yeah, certainly wouldn't hesitate to have a 400 of this. Lovely. So yeah, I think this one is really nice actually. So it's quite different to the other lagers that I've had from some of the other breweries in recent times. And I mean, here in Skåne, you've got a good selection of lager beers here. I mean, you've got Rocket Brewing Company's Moon and Gold. You have the how would we say it? You have the Skånsk Lager from Hönsinge Hantwerksbryggeri. That's one of my favourite lagers that you can get in Sweden actually. And this one certainly stands up really nicely for me. It's not going to blow the head off you or anything like that, but it's just a nice, really pleasantly drinkable beer this. So thumbs up to Hönsinge for this. I'll be, as I say, quite curious to try some of their other beers, but we'll need to see how much beer I have space for come the end of the month. But yeah, it's great. The other thing I'll say about this one on first impression is that it's one of these beers that really, the aroma that you get out of this matches really well with the flavour. This beer comes across as you expect it to. The aftertaste, as I say, is a wee bit kind of sweeter though in a sense. But let's try and break this one down for you then and just see how we go. So at the backbone of this beer, you can feel a little bit of a sort of kind of grainy, crackery sort of thing with this. I feel that the backbone of this beer is a bit crackery. It's a little bit, there's a touch of a kind of white bready note to this one. So yeah, middle third of your palate, back third of your palate, for me, it's kind of crackery or knäckebröd, as a lot of Scandinavians might call it. So yeah, you can feel that going right across the middle of your palate. On top of that though, a little bit of a kind of smoother white bread in there, and as you go to either end of that middle third of your palate, there is quite a nice sort of bread crusty element coming out of it as well. And then sitting on top of that bread crusty note, you get a more kind of smooth white bready character coming out of the beer. So yeah, I do like that about this too. So yeah, you can get that, but then on top of that, the white bready note in this one incidentally is not too thick. But on top of that, you can feel the Pilsner malt, and then towards the back half of that middle third of your palate, you can really feel that crispness of the Pilsner malt in there, on top of the bready layer. But on top of both of these things, in the middle of that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a little bit of a kind of oily sweet circle there. So in the dead centre of that, there's a wee bit of a sweet kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing there, and it's quite concentrated in that sense, a bit more oily and sweet. But as you move further out from the centre of that, it becomes a little bit more kind of grainy, and it becomes a little bit more kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit. Like you get a little bit more of the kind of graininess of the biscuit, if that makes sense. So yeah, kind of knäckebrödy base to the beer, a little bit of a kind of white bready note on top of that for me, and a wee bit of the wheat kind of smoothing it out there. Then you get a bit of the kind of Pilsner malty crispness, and then on top of that you're getting the kind of biscuity layer out of the beer. I think that summarises the middle third of your palate quite well, and either side of that, as we say, a bit more of a bread crusty note. But that is your malt base in this one, I would say. What you'll notice though is that the further you go into the aftertaste, towards the kind of front, on the front half of that middle third of your tongue, that's where you get the kind of sweeter, corny elements coming out of this one, and you can feel it just kind of oiling up a wee bit the further that you go into the aftertaste. So I really like how that goes together in this one, that's for sure. So yeah, certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this beer again. This is a solid lager beer, and if they can do this one this well, I'd be curious to try a few of the other lager types from them, like a straight up Pilsner or a Munich Helles or Dunkel Schwarzbier, whatever. I don't know, I need to have a look and see. They did have quite an impressive range of beers, as I said, but I'll need to have a wee look and see if see exactly what things are available from them in that light. So maybe need to order a few more lager beers from these guys. Interesting. But yeah, let's look at the other part of the palette then. So back third of the palette, there's a wee bit going on there, but not madly much. On top of that, on that border region between middle third and back third of your palette, you get a wee bit of a kind of bready build up in there, a wee bit of bread crust. Then the base of that back third of your palette is the kind of knekkebrödy grainy sort of thing. And as I say, the graininess gets a wee bit more intense the further back that you go on the palette there. But on top of that, you've got a wee bit of a brown. You've got a wee bit of a kind of brown bready sort of thing. I do find the bready character is a little bit more kind of wholemealy and brown bready there on the back third of your palette. But then on top of that, you get a more kind of airy, yeasty note in there. And you can feel a wee bit of corn sweetness to it as well, but then it has a wee bit of an airy, white bready note to it. So when you start at the back of the palette with this beer, you can feel the flavour is a bit taller. And as you push further forward, it just condenses together a little bit more. And then the flavour is just a wee bit more kind of squashed together in that sense. So yeah, I do like how it goes about its business in that sense. Actually, the malty side of this beer I think is quite nicely done, and the corn just gives you a wee bit of a slightly sweeter aftertaste to this beer. So it really is like a kind of, I think the correct style definition for this beer would be a Euro pale lager. I think that's what they use on Rate Beer and Untappd and all these kind of things. But it is well done. This, don't be put off by that. On the just on this note as well, when they've added corn to this, I'd love to see these guys do like a Japanese style rice lager. That would be a really interesting thing when they can do the corn lager like this. But anyway, let's focus on the hoppy part of the beer. So back corners of the palate, there's certainly a wee bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it gets a little touch herbal, but then as you move towards the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a wee bit more sort of floral and aromatic. And there's a wee bit of a kind of spiciness to it, but round the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and grassy. And as I say, the green component that you get out of this one is a kind of more wet. It's more of a kind of wet grassiness and wet leafiness that you get out of this beer. So it's kind of interesting in that sense, but you do feel a wee bit of the zestiness, the grassy zestiness just coming out of the hoppy character there with this beer as well. And Centennial and Citra are both going to give you a wee bit of zestiness in their green components, so keep that in mind. Do keep that in mind. But let's focus on the fruity part of the beer then, the front third of your palate. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again there's a wee bit of a bready build up there and a wee bit of a bread crust, but the base of that front third of your palate is a bit more kind of smooth, I would say. So yeah, it's definitely as we say, it's definitely got just a nice wee bit of the kind of, I'd say a soft white bready smoothness there, but it's also a little bit crisp. You get that sort of Pilsner malty thing to it, but sitting on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble there. You get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So towards the back of that, front third of your tongue, you can feel there's a bit of a kind of stronger passion fruity note in there, and that's the Citra that's going to give you that. But as you come further forward, you get a more oily mango note out of it, and the further that you go into the aftertaste with it, you start to get a wee bit of a kind of dried apricot-y sort of thing, and a little bit of a sultana type vibe. But sultana's quite minimal. I would say the apricot-y notes there, but then as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, then it's certainly a bit more oily, and that's when the Centennial really starts to show its head. You start to get these big sort of lemony notes in there, although I would argue that there's potentially just a little bit of an oily perry ester to this one. But then yeah, just behind the front tip of the tongue, it's got a wee bit more of a kind of it's got a little bit more of a kind of zesty kind of thing, that you can feel that lemony note mixing in, the lemony Centennial note mixing in with the kind of grassy esters from this beer. So yeah, this is a really interesting one. I've enjoyed this. You know, it's a straight shooting beer. It's very easy to drink this, but I think it's always quite nice to dissect these a little bit and think about what's going on. But yeah, I think it's probably fair to describe this one as a sort of pale lager. It really works quite well actually. So thumbs up to Hönsinge Hantwerksbryggeri for this one, or Hönsinge. Yeah, I need to get my pronunciation right there, but yeah, Hönsinge Hantwerksbryggeri. I think they've done a solid job of this, and I would be curious to try some of their other lagers off the back of this. But let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. Light body, definitely. Yeah, so it is quite a light, it's quite a light bodied beer, this one. The carbonation is quite smooth. It's got a lovely kind of wetness to it actually, which I really enjoy. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think is very, very nice. So yeah, yeah, wet, kind of slightly slick lager beer, this one. I think it's the corn that gives it that sort of slickness, but yeah, top end of light body, smooth carbonation, a little bit of slickness to it, nice kind of wet cleanliness. In terms of the hoppy bitterness and things, it says on the bottle here it's 22 IBUs. I'm trying to think, would I have picked up, I might have thought this was, I think I might have guessed that this one was, a 20-25 IBU. I think I would have got it with this one, but as I always say, my IBU counts are one of my weakest points of beer reviewing, so take that with a pinch of salt. Always take my IBU counts with a pinch of salt, because I've had those wrong on quite a few occasions. But yeah, the malty side of this beer, as I say, it's got a lovely kind of smoothness to it. It's got a bit of crispness in there, and you do get a wee bit of sweetness from the corn and the biscuit as well. But the fruity side of this beer, there's a bit of tropical character to it, and it has got a wee bit of zestiness, and I think the zestiness starts to come out a wee bit more the further you go into the aftertaste as well. But yeah, the way this goes together, I think it's very nice. So big thumbs up to Hönsinge Hantwerksbryggeri for this, and cool to introduce these guys on the channel as well. So yeah, a little bit of a longer review than this one needed, I think, but brain is tired, so my apologies for that. But yeah, I've enjoyed this one, and this beer will disappear fairly quickly. One of my only complaints that I could have about this is that it's not in a half-litre bottle. I do think liters should lagers should be sold in 440s or half litres, but that's just me. But yeah, this one, the Skånsk Sommar lager, a 4.6% lager beer with a bit of Pilsner malt, wheat malt, and corn in it from Hönsinge Hantwerksbryggeri near Trelleborg. Interesting stuff. So I want to try a few more lager beers from these guys, and I guess I'll need to try one of the stouts and one of the IPAs as well. But yeah, definitely worth checking these guys out, I think, on the basis of this beer. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Hönsinge Hantwerksbryggeri, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future. But until the next time, Slange at school. Cheers. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll catch you guys in the next review. There we go.